I love just to do a bunch of stuff and I get bored doing one thing for too long. And then after a while, I'm like, I feel like I need to do something risky. The literal worst case that happens is 12 months from now, I crash and burn and I just go get a job. Worst case is not that bad. Yeah. So let me bet on myself. Yeah. Every single person starts at zero. So the moment you realize this random person who I'm never gonna meet ever gave me $1, you're like, wait a second, I can do this again. Okay, go do it again then. That's all entrepreneurs are doing is they find one thing that someone buys and they do it a million times.
Welcome to the very first Advantage podcast. We appreciate you tuning in today and would love your feedback. Today's guest is Daniel Berk. This is going to be a fun one. Daniel was one of the first employees at beehiiv, helped grow that business from almost zero when he joined to over $30 million in ARR. At the same time, he built his own business while he was a very successful employee there in podcasts, became the host of MoneyWise, which is one of the largest startup-focused podcasts out there. Really fun conversation. We're going to dig into a lot of these different topics. Really excited to have him on. A quick one before we start. This show is brought to you by Propel. They find brands like yours exceptional marketing and operational talent in the US, LatAm markets, and beyond. For now, the links are in the show notes, and all of our listeners get 10% off your first hire. Okay, let's get into it. All right, perfect. Well, Daniel, super excited. I actually just got to do your podcast, so we're doing an exchange here. So now we're flipping the tables. You were interviewing me, and now I got to interview you. Yeah. Really excited on this for multiple reasons. First of all, a lot of things you're doing are the things I'm now leaning into. So I'm going to pick your brain on a lot of these things. Yeah. But I also think your arc, you're going from working for people to now stepping out and doing your own thing and, growing kind of multiple different brands at the same time while learning a whole new medium is just going to be, I think, really exciting for our audience to listen to. Yeah,
I can't wait. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. Well, so first of all, why don't you give a quick introduction of yourself? I'd love to hear 2-minute, tell me about you. Yeah.
Well, I love to build. And so right now I feel like I'm generalist is maybe not the right word, but I love just to do a bunch of stuff and I get bored doing one thing for too long. And so from very early on, I started a landscaping business when I was 12.
Wow.
And I was a really big 12-year-old. You might not be able to tell I'm sitting down right now, but I'm 6'5". And when I was 12, I think I was close to 6 feet tall. So I was full grown at 15. And so 12 years old, I was walking around the neighborhood and I was charging people $30 to $75 to mow their lawn. And it was a summer and I obviously had to go back to school after the summer was over. So I just had to stop mowing lawns, but I was making good money at 12. So early on, I just felt, man, making money you can just go make money. If you try hard enough, you can go make money. So that, through my early, let's call it high school years and into college, I always just thought, can I make money doing this? I'm in school. I'm like, can I make money with fixing people's computers? So through college, I was at Clemson. I went to school for history and philosophy. Super random. I just wanted to get out as fast as possible.
Very marketable major.
So marketable. Yeah, the best major I could think of. But I worked in IT for Clemson University while I was getting that degree. And that's random. Everyone else was a computer science, computer engineer. I was a history major working in IT at Clemson. Meanwhile, I also had my own marketing agency building websites, which I learned how to do because I worked in IT, fixing people's websites and computers while I was getting a history degree. Again, super random. After I graduated, I moved to Spain. My then girlfriend, now wife, got a Fulbright scholarship. She went and taught Spanish and English in Spain. I was like, well, I don't want to live across the ocean from you, so I'll just figure out how to move there. I figured out how to get a job teaching English, but didn't pay very well. So I started my own marketing agency, building people's marketing engines and websites in the US while I lived in Spain. So it's all this stuff just compounds over time. And you're like, I know how to do just enough to sell. So while I'm selling that service, I'm going to learn the 20 other things I have no idea how to do while I'm selling this very specific thing. So anyways, now we're 15 years removed from that life. And I worked in manufacturing for 5 years doing sales and marketing for an e-commerce company, sold $2.5 million on Amazon during COVID with sneeze guards. I don't know if you even remember what those are.
Very much. So we had a food company at that point. So we
that's
had all
right.
this
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
So, did a bunch of Amazon e-commerce direct D2C. And then after a while, I'm like, I feel like I need to do something risky. I want to just jump into startup territory. And so I left it was a 60-year-old manufacturing company. I left in 2021, right after COVID was, everyone was work from home. I was at home for 6 months at that point. I went to a Series F company, which is barely risky. I didn't even know you could get that far into the alphabet. They were one of Stripe's largest, not manufacturers, but processors. They did like billions of dollars of Stripe processed for like 501c3 nonprofits. And I worked there for a year, actually building a morning brew lookalike company for them.
Okay.
Most serendipitous job you could do. Random post I saw, a mutual friend of a mutual friend said, who knows what morning brew is? I raised my hand. I was like, I'm obsessed with morning brew. I read morning brew. I've, been tweeting at the founders at that point. They're like, we're looking for someone to just build this engine for us. So I got that job. That was my first startup job. From there, after a year, I went to seed startups. I had my own consultancy. I did really fractional director work for marketing and for sales and just early building the process of actually go to market. And that led to beehiiv ultimately, where the newsletter world, I was living in it, I was breathing it, and they needed someone that could both understand the market.
How early was beehiiv at that point?
Very early. I met Tyler a month after they launched because of that Series F startup where I was building a morning brew lookalike. I had patched together 5 or 6 different tools to make this process that he had already done for morning brew and was now doing for beehiiv. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, what you're doing is awesome. If it does what you're saying it will do, it solves all of my problems. So we stayed in touch. I actually interviewed for the first employee. Wasn't a good fit, and I will say that now and would have said that then, but I kept in touch. I was like, dude, what you're building is awesome. So I started bringing a lot of my clients from their different, dilapidated platforms over to beehiiv. And then about 7 or 8 months later, he hired me as the first go-to-market hire.
Well, so beehiiv, so we launched our newsletter on beehiiv. So I got all the benefit of all the hard work. I never had to stitch all the things together, but platform's awesome.
It's
so
great.
you joined that, how much was that doing in revenue when you joined? How big was that business?
I don't remember the exact number we're doing in revenue. It was less than $1 million. And I remember because we celebrated $1 million. It was 12 of us. We did a paint and sip virtually. I think there were only 10 showed up because some people couldn't make it. And so 12 employees, maybe 10 or 11 people, hour-long paint and sip. And so we were probably doing 700,000 when I joined, or maybe 600,000. It was funny because what I tell everyone who knows me in real life, my friends, they're all like, yo, why are you joining this company? What's it called? beehiiv? Like, no one knew what beehiiv was. And I was already doing a bunch of risky startup stuff. That's all beehiiv was when I joined this is just another risky startup. And that's my love language is risky startups. Like never would have thought it would become what it is today. I always thought it could. And that's why I joined. I'm never going to join a startup.
And you joined as the first salesperson, right?
Yeah, first salesperson.
So and who were you calling? What was your ICP at that point?
Yeah, really, at that point, it was creators. One of our biggest first...
Which is really that was the unique aspect, because
Yes.
they kind of went after more of this influencer creator.
Yeah, it was a Substack competitor when I first joined. And so people thought of, how do I write online and distribute to an audience with email? beehiiv was in that right down the middle center of that ecosystem. As I joined, I built out a real enterprise process for the company. And there were no enterprise customers when I joined. Enterprise being, people with hundreds of thousands or millions of, audience members, subscribers, podcast listeners, whatever that audience looks like. It was a lot of creators going from 0 to 1. Someone who says, I don't have anything. Where should I start? I know Morning Brew because I've read Morning Brew. I know the hustle, some of these different opportunities out there. They wanted to start. So we were going after them. But every now and again, you'd get someone that says, hey, I have a really big audience now. So we knew the product market fit was, oh, wait, if we can serve this audience that knows we exist now and has huge audiences already, then we could actually go up market quite effectively. And so I really created the system that helped to build out a real sales, team, a sales process, a sales outbound motion from effectively nothing.
And that's the number one thing, at least I see with a lot of SaaS, is if you start really small at that lower ICP and then build the features. One, you're going to get some breakouts, but then you're also, the product's actually going to be ready to get enterprise. Because imagine when you guys started selling enterprise, it is a whole nother beast.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, you would mention one word and they'd say, all right, we need SOC 2, we need InfoSec. We don't even know how to spell SOC 2. What are you talking
about? SOC 2, what's that?
And it's funny because we eventually matured out of this, but early on, we would build the enterprise solution when a customer said, we need this.
Yeah.
Like, we'll pay you, here's money, but we can't pay you until you build specifically this. We're like, okay, we'll build it. Done, build it. Here's the,
have a base of customers. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And so we really touted that as our nimble product velocity of, hey, 20% of our roadmap at that point was dedicated to customer
What did
feedback.
that sales growth team look like underneath? Like how big did that team end up growing to?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined, we had no solutions team, we had no sales team, we had no customer success team. And so I was end to end. We eventually hired a customer success team fairly early on, but I mean, when I sold, it was passed to who? There's no one else after the sales process except customer support, and we had a support team. I was the first, and there's now in the company, there are 4 AEs and a VP of sales. There are 5 or 6 solutions engineers and probably 8 to 10 customer success managers.
Oh, wow.
140 employees. So it really did scale.
Do they report how much revenue is now, or can you share that?
They reported 30 million ARR, which I can say.
Yeah.
So that's the most recent as of
and
June
you went into
2026.
chief evangelist, which was, what is a chief evangelist? It was the
Yeah,
first time
chief
I've seen-
evangelist is funny. I remember that was originally just like a self-given title. I remember texting Tyler Denk. I was like, hey, I'm just going to start calling myself chief evangelist. Is that cool? He's like, I don't care. It's funny. Our brand online, I don't know if you've seen any of our idiotic banter on
Yes.
LinkedIn, but a lot of what I think makes beehiiv human to people and removes some of the facade of where a lot of the competitors were in this ecosystem. If you go buy something from MailChimp, there's no real human behind MailChimp that you can like personify. Oh, MailChimp is this human.
Yeah.
beehiiv, you think of Tyler Denk, you think of Daniel Berk, you think
Yeah.
of all the different C-suite, the people who are actively online. So Tyler and I created very intentionally early on this irreverent dumbness online where he would say something like, I remember when I posted, hey, I'm leaving beehiiv and here's all this stuff, he commented, you never even worked here. And he got almost ratioed me, but we're still doing that even after having left. And so chief evangelist, I just co-branded myself with the company early on, not intentionally. Early on, I'm like, dude, no one knows what beehiiv is. And the only way I'm going to sell people who, don't laugh me off
Yeah.
is if I'm constantly putting myself and beehiiv in the same sentence, because I know I have an audience and I can build an audience. But if my audience leans into this thing I'm selling,
Did you have an audience before you went to beehiiv, or were you
not
kinda
what I do now.
Yeah.
I did a little bit. I had maybe 15,000 people on LinkedIn, so not zero, maybe 10 to 15. I had 5,000 or so on Twitter. I was doing some stuff, but it wasn't like people didn't know who I was.
And then so from beehiiv, where in that journey did you start branching out and start to say like, okay, now I want to start thinking about doing my own thing?
Yeah.
How did that look?
I think that's what's so unique about beehiiv, and I'll even say Tyler specifically. He always, to this day, encourages people at beehiiv who are full-time employees to also dog food their own product. He has his own newsletter, Big Desk Energy, and I would say 30, maybe more employees right now, as of today, have their own revenue-generating businesses that are actually built on beehiiv.
Oh, wow.
And so very early on, I had my own personal newsletter on beehiiv before I worked at beehiiv.
So that's how
So
you got, yeah.
I was bringing clients over. I knew how to use the product. That's how I sold myself to beehiiv. I can sell this product because I'm already selling this product. So that was, an easy way for me to prove I know how to do this. But I just kept running that newsletter. And then over time, I'm helping people onboard their own companies to beehiiv. And, in that process, you realize, oh, wait a second, I can do this pretty well because I've done it 10 times, now 100 times, now 1,000 times. I've probably built 1,000 beehiiv accounts over the years. And doing that, you realize, oh, these are all similar, different flavors of the exact same business model. You have paid subscriptions, you have ads, you have podcasts, you have, owned media, earned media. These people are all making money with different content verticals, but the system is systematizable.
Yeah.
And so as I learned that, I'm like, well, let me go launch a podcast. I remember my podcast at the time was Two Dads in Tech. And this entire vertical of mine started with one DM I sent to someone who I had never met, he saw me and I saw him, and we had DM'd a couple times. I onboarded him to beehiiv. So we met virtually, but we never, still to this day, never met. I said, hey, you want to launch a podcast with me? And he said, yes. That's it. First podcast episode was literally the first time we met in face-to-face on a video. And so I DM'd him. I said, hey, it would be super cool to launch this podcast as the first time we meet. And we should record it. And it should be, we talk and just introduce each other. And at the end, we said, hey, we should make this a podcast. And then that's actually the episode. And that's what it was. We did $78,000 in the first 13 months of that podcast.
If you were going to advise, AKA someone just starting a podcast, what do you think you guys did exceptionally well on that?
Yes.
To get that.
There's a lot I think we did that more people should do. The first one is what I think more people have found out now about since TBPN sold to OpenAI. We clipped the mess out of our podcast. And so every single week we recorded one long form podcast. Sometimes we had a guest, sometimes it was just him and I bantering with each other. But every single week for, I think, 60 weeks, we recorded the podcast, never missed a break. When I went on vacation, I brought my studio with me. When he went on vacation, same thing, never missed. But what we did is we hired an offshore team who clipped every video into 3 short form videos every single day of the month over and over and over again. So we posted 3 short form videos on Reels, 3 short form videos on TikTok, 3 on LinkedIn. And at one point we were doing X as
just
well.
content.
Figuring
out. So the engine in media,
yes.
the machine you're building is a content engine. And
a content engine.
Yeah, it's just how do you create content on content on content?
Yes. And we also leaned into our existing audiences. So I, at that point, throughout had gotten to 20 to 30,000 on LinkedIn, and he also had 40 to, at the end, about 55,000 on LinkedIn. So we would package everything for sponsors as a Two Dads in Tech front man, but actually the package is you're getting access to our LinkedIn audience as
to
well.
getting more stuff in there as
exactly.
well. So we're going to, and kind of build a package for that person
100%.
that makes sense for them.
Yep.
And then, because you're in newsletters
Yep.
and you know that world very well in beehiiv, podcast is a different medium.
Totally.
How did you get smart in that? Like, what, like you,
Made a lot of dumb mistakes. I literally remember the thought I had in my mind, and the moment I had the thought of, I have no idea how to do podcasts, but I really want to know. And so I just tried long enough and hard enough, and getting a co-host was a really smart decision because you're always in it together with someone else.
Yeah.
I think actually a lot more people who have no idea what they're doing should have a co-host, because you don't have to script everything if you're talking to someone.
Yeah.
If you're talking to a camera, you say something or else what do you do? There's no pausing. And so I think some of it was finding the right co-host who was equally as idiotic as me and willing to make a ton of mistakes, but just being consistent. Some of these episodes, no one in the world's going to listen to, but it's a rep. If you can get enough reps in, you're going to get better at something.
Where did you kind of start? Like your vision was like, we're going to do this. And then what actually resonated with people?
Yeah, guests. To be honest, it was every single episode we had that performed better was always a guest. If you look at just the episodes we did with guests versus the ones that were just banter between Troy's his name and I, it was like night and day. And so eventually we got to the point where he and I both had to decide, okay, to do this right, we either need to make this a thing and make it a business. We were spending 1 hour a week on it. For the first 12 weeks, we spent more than that to optimize the exact way we would delegate to an offshore team. But eventually we literally were doing 1 hour of work every single week.
Wow.
He had his own company. I had a full-time job, and that was all we could do. So early on, literally day one, we're like, we're only going to do this if we don't have to waste our lives doing it. But when we realized, we can make 6 or 7 figures doing this, we have to waste our lives if we're going to keep going this way, or we got to shut it down. We just decided, let's just go on hiatus. So he's out right now, which is fine, amicable, great guy. But now I'm literally right now, I don't know what to do with this podcast. I have a conversation with the podcast advisor next week. I have this asset that I could definitely do, but it's a thing. I mean, you got to keep oiling the machine for it to keep going.
One of the things, and I heard the stat, and I didn't verify it, I should have, but I'll repeat it anyways, but you can verify this. But 30% of podcasts only launch 1 podcast. 70% only launch 3 podcasts. I do think when you look at the top podcasters, it is just you're gonna stay in longer, and you're just gonna keep making more and more relevant content.
Everyone wants to launch a podcast.
Yes,
it's easy, but I think the stat I do know. Now I'm on the spot. I feel like I should be checked on this too, but I think 90% of podcasts don't make it to 20 episodes.
Yeah,
that's the one I always come back to. 20 episodes. I remember Troy and I kind of celebrated episode 20 because we're like, all right, we're now in the 5% or whatever.
Yeah.
We had no views, we had no subscribers, no one cared about us.
Yeah.
But we were having a blast, and now we have a skill set. I mean, I host MoneyWise now, and that came from having Sam Parr on Two Dads in Tech, and meeting him and developing that relationship for 2 years, and just having the reps of learning how to have the taste and the flow and the cadence of podcasting.
So you do that podcast. You guys make $78,000. You said the first year.
Yeah.
So you got this good side hustle. At what point did you say, okay, now I'm going to make this side hustle the full hustle?
Yeah. So we did, 78 or so thousand. I did another 20 or 30 that year just from creating content for different brands and stuff, and also getting paid by like Twitter pays me and stuff. Not meaningful, but I mean, it was like $5,000 for posting. Just literally being an idiot online, I get paid money. I was like, that's pretty cool. And then I have a media company with my wife that I started a little bit earlier than Two Dads in Tech. And so when I was doing my taxes this year, and I have a tax guy now, which thank God, because I sent him so many things. I literally apologized to him. I'm like paying him. I shouldn't apologize. But I'm like, I'm sorry. I sent him another document, which you are more than familiar with how complicated it can get. And I'm like, wait a second. I make a ton of money not on my W-2. what am I doing here? And so I'm always turning down people in beehiiv space specifically. They're like, hey, thanks for this. I just opened an account. Can you help more? And I'm like, the true answer was no. Like I literally, one, it's not my job to get you to be successful on this platform, but also two, I don't have time because I have to go sell it to the next person. And also I have all of these other,
There's a whole other onboarding
I would
team.
literally pass him and I'm like, dude, I could crush it for this person, but I can't. And so it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I've developed enough skills in enough places. The literal worst case that happens is 12 months from now, I crash and burn and I just go get a job. I just turned down a job that was like $300,000 salary. And I'm like, okay, well, if worst case is I go get a high paying job in tech, that's like a really, really safe bet. And I know like I'm not downplaying, job market's crazy. No one knows what the future looks like. AI is eating the world. But besides that, worst case is not that bad. So let me bet on myself and see what happens.
I think that's that confidence to be able to like, I'm always employable. You've left beehiiv now fully, and now you're kind of out in the wilderness. I've grown up in like the traditional kind of founder VC. My parents are small business. Before entrepreneur was cool, it was called small business. Like, that is entrepreneur, and like that is 99% of entrepreneurs out there. But I also think that is the thing that I think is going to be the most accessible for everyone. And I think everyone, and also I think it's also the right thing for a lot of people. Raising venture capital comes with its whole other kind of game. I think it gets a lot of hype, but there's a lot of challenges there as well. I always tell people, Patagonia never raised any money. Pretty cool business, right? There's lots of cool business. But I do think that it's still scary, even if like I got another job. So now you've got two podcasts. You still have one going, and then MoneyWise as well.
I have MoneyWise, and then I have Two Dads in Tech is on hiatus, but it'll come back probably with a different name pretty soon.
Are you still doing that with your wife? Are you guys still doing the
we have a twice a week newsletter to parents in Charleston, South Carolina, and parents separately in Somerville, South Carolina. We have a full-time writer. We have a salesperson. I mean, we love it. And it's
so now that you're all in, if you kind of think about what is the future, how do you think about building this business? What do you want? What's the goal?
I don't know. That's what's fun and exciting and terrifying. So separately, and I can't tell you all the details of this one, but I just opened an LLC with a buddy of mine and a business bank account, and we have a fully viable product that we're ready to release that I'm very, very excited about. There's a world where we just launch micro SaaS, over and over and do, a few $1 million a year, just, 50-50 stake. And that's kind of what we're starting. I'm like, if we can be very good at optimizing process with AI, lean into audience and owned media and earned media, and then just have trust where when you do suggest something to the people who are listening to you, one, don't put your foot in your mouth, and two, actually have people who respect you and buy the thing that you're suggesting. I'm like, that sounds like an infinite cash tree to me. I don't know if it is because I haven't made it yet, but I'm like, if I can just repeat the same process that I've done over and over and over again for myself and own 50+% of the company, why not just do that over and over and over again?
Yeah, just repeat the
So
mechanics.
That's kind of the current. Yeah. I'm kind of just experimenting. I'm honestly like, how high can I take this thing without committing to one thing?
So what do you think, like, if you're talking to other people that were like, is it just like get in the game? Just like, is that like.
Absolutely. Just start something. I mean, it's funny. I tweeted today. I said, and it was like kind of irreverent because I don't believe this fully, but that's my Twitter brand. I said a Twitter audience or an X audience is the most valuable asset you can have in the internet. And like, again, like I can pick that apart myself, but I said it because it's a great tweet. Someone said, sounds good. How's 19 followers? And I was like, oh, it's hilarious. And I clicked on their profile and they had 18 followers. And I haven't responded to them yet. I will after this, but that's great. Like that person just started and they have 18 people listening to them. Like, it is kind of laughable. It's not a lot. It's not going to make you any money, but eventually it will. And every single person starts at zero at some point.
You got to stay. I mean, I was just talking the other day, and I was talking about when we started Freshly. I used to refresh my Google Analytics, which would show us how many. That's the only dashboard we have, but that would show us how many customers, how many orders. And I literally would refresh it all day, and like there'd be one
it's the best
order, and it'd be like, and then like two, and then. But I remember literally like walking my dog and refreshing it every time an order came in. I'd be like, yes, like, and so it went from 1 to like then 10, then it was like 20, and then but when we sold, it was literally we were getting in a week we would get 50,000 new customers in there. Right. That wasn't even like we sold our last week. We did 1.1 million meals that we sold. So that's at $10 a meal. That is absolutely like, it's insane. But it started with that one. And I remember people were always like, and I was probably more excited when that one customer would come in than I was like, oh, 50. It's like, it's just like, but it is just getting in the game and then staying in the game. That's always what I tell people is like, you got to commit to 10 years. I actually saw a post by the Bloom guy. We anchored the same thing, but I was thinking 10-year journeys.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always like you're signing up. Like when we did Pet Folk, I said I inked it. I said 10 years. Yeah. And I shared all the goals and everything was a 10-year journey. Yeah. That's the minimum. Like, and I think if you whatever you're doing, you got to think in 10-year increments. You got to want to do it for 10 years.
You got to want to do it. People think, well, what's the best way to start a business, or what's the most lucrative business idea? And I'm like, well, what do you like to do? What makes you excited to wake up? I think sometimes people get too far along in monetizing the asset, and wait a second, do you even like doing that? Because if you hate doing that, or you're not obsessed with it, like 1 year is going to be hard, let alone 10 years. So I think you're absolutely right. And I resonate with the Stripe story as well. I remember early days, we had a Stripe channel in the Slack for beehiiv, and like the whole company would at channel every few hours, like just a reminder, like people are actually paying for this. And it's crazy. I mean, the adrenaline that comes from people buying a product that you build.
Oh, it's so cool.
Is awesome.
Let me pause here for a second and introduce you to our title sponsor, Propel. Every business I've built has had a huge piece with international talent. And as we started building the Advantage, we wanted to bring in international talent focused around media, podcasts, and we started doing a lot of research, and we came across Propel, and we were really excited first and foremost to use them for us, and we later reach out as a sponsor. Here's the best part. It's all performance-based. You only pay one-off fee once you actually hire someone. That means no retainers, no ongoing costs, plus every hire comes with a 3-month guarantee. I think bringing on international talent is really hard, really rewarding. As we all know, bringing a talent onto your team is the most important part about building a business. And with Propel, I can speak for ourselves. They have been a huge part of our ability to recruit great talent to our team. Every Advantage listener gets 10% off their first hire. For more information, check out the show notes. Now you're doing MoneyWise, and you've taken over, and like such a cool podcast, huge platform. You're now you're like a relatively early founder building this business. What is like some of the top like advice that you've heard on the channel that you're just like on the podcast that you're just like that resonates so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole spectrum. I think it shocks me how many people say the money they got from an exit didn't make them happy. And so when you think of, oh, wow, like $1 billion, or, you talk to people who have hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're like, wow, that sounds awesome. It solves so many of my problems. Like, well, like the first maybe 10, maybe the first 20, it solves a lot of problems. But like eventually we have on MoneyWise, we call it a threshold number. Like what number just ended needing more, where like any more wouldn't have made any difference. It's way lower than I expect with most people. I talked to a guy recently, he's worth personally about $600 million. And he said, he sold one company for $1.5 billion. And he said, that didn't really change my life. It was the first company he sold for $13 million that made me a millionaire. That changed everything. Yeah. Everything after that was just a repeatable process and more money. But that first one was the everything changer.
Yeah, and I think that's like, the old I get is like you can only sleep in one bed. You can only drive one car. So like the first is always the most important. So like having a home, buying a home that your family loves, like that's game changer.
Huge.
Having a home that you can walk into every day and say like, oh my God, I love this. Yeah. Not worrying about paying groceries and the mortgage. Those are the benchmarks that I think like, and for a lot of like, for a lot of Americans, that's like, is the threshold. What I always think is like, I always talk to people and I'm like, what's your goal? Yeah. Because we at Cutting Horse, we're talking to a lot of founders. You always want to like, again, I always want to know like, I'm getting on the journey with you. What journey is that? So my analogy I always give is like, we're going to get in a car, we're going to go road trip. Yeah. Like we should know where each other of us want to go because
date
like,
a little bit.
We like, you don't want to take turns driving and you think we're going to Florida and I think we're going to California. I mean, it may be an interesting road trip, but
it's a great analogy.
So like always is like, what do you want to build? Like there's no right or wrong on that. But then when you start actually talking to people, it's like, what's the goal? And people like, I want to be a billionaire. It's like, okay, well, for what? Like, what is that? What does that solve? So like, I get it. Like if you're in business, the game is like you're benchmarking versus other founders. But I'm like, under the hood, what do you really want? Like when you get to most people, it's like, oh man, I've like really the number's a lot lower. It's like, it's that 10 million mark.
Yeah.
Whereas like, you're like, okay, I want to like have a great home. Okay. What does
Yeah.
that look like? Okay. It's a $5 million home. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you put a down payment on $1 million, and then it's like some degree of cash flow. And I always think like the small business, the owned business. And I talked to a lot of it, and I think it's just, really excited to have you on the podcast, because I think it's like building the job, building a dream job.
Yes.
And if you can build a dream job that you wake up stoked, you're
Yeah.
learning every day, you're talking to great people,
Yes.
you're building your network, you're trying new things, you're able to pay for things.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal. Like to me, it's like that's
freedom.
the first goal. That's freedom.
It's what it is. And I was just talking to a friend of mine who I had to like question it. He said he's never made his first dollar online, which nowadays is like actually hard to believe. Sometimes when I talk to people, I'm like, are you serious? Like, super smart guy. And he said, you're going to help me make my first dollar. And I was like, dude, it's going to change your whole life. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is two things. One, it is very, very easy to make your first dollar online. It's not easy to become a billionaire or millionaire online. That's hard. It takes a lot of time. But to make your first dollar, I can do that today. Give me any subject, any person, any skill set. I'll make you $1 right now online. There's literally nothing you could throw at me that couldn't make $1. So that's one thing. But the second thing that most people don't realize is that first dollar will change everything for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
The moment you realize this random person who I'm never going to meet ever, who I might not even know their real name, all I have is this token on Stripe, gave me $1, $10, $20, whatever. You're like, wait a second, I can do this again. Okay, go do it again then. That's all entrepreneurs are doing is they find one thing that someone buys and they do it 1,000,000 times.
It's amazing. And I think it's such an exciting story, because I think, look, I'm very bullish on AI. I think it's actually going to unlock people's ability to I think what we've continuously seen with technology is that it gets rid of the rigorous things that we don't like.
Yeah.
Like, you go back 200 years ago, something like 50% of the population was farming.
Mm-hmm.
Now 2%, and we have more food and more abundance.
Not ranching, farming.
Farming, yes. I grew up ranching. But like the goal is like, how do we not do the things we don't like so we can do the things? And I think like what I see is like this, what we call right now is like an influencer economy. It's like this, creating podcasts, creating newsletters, then creating products around that.
Yes.
And really creating I think what I'm seeing that's happening is the inverse of what used to happen, right? So now and I think it gets like food and like you're an influencer, and I get some of that. But what you're really doing is you're creating a marketing machine before you create the product.
Yes.
Now, what you normally, the old way it's done is you'd create a product, then you would create the marketing machine, and you have to learn the marketing machine, and you build the brand. But like really what the opportunity now, and I think this is what I tell people is like, you can now go build the marketing machine.
Yeah.
You can build the Twitter, you can build the podcast, you can build the newsletter. Thanks to your tools that you're building are like relatively free.
Yeah.
Like you're talking $30 a month.
Negligible. Yeah.
They're amazing. They require literally no knowledge. I mean, my first, when we were like freshly, we were doing CRMs. It was like you had to code HTML. You had to do all these things. So to get an email out was like, now it's like you like can have the most gorgeous email done in 2 seconds.
Yes.
So I just think the opportunity of like, how do more people, to your point, like take this digital idea, I think you're a great example of like, you realized how to build the marketing engine. Now you're going backwards and saying, well, now let's start building the products.
Yes. Someone I respect, his name is Tebow, and I actually had him on MoneyWise. He has 5 revenue generating products that are all like indie hacked products. A lot of them, if not all of them, somewhat related to AI, if not built by AI. And he does $1 million a month in revenue from those 5. And he's majority owner of all of them. And I think he's brought in some, co-founders at some point. But what he does, he has about 150,000 followers on X. And every single idea he has, he uses his audience to find if there's product market fit or not. And if there is, he builds it and then he makes money. If there's not, he very quickly invalidates it and moves on. And you can do that if you have 150,000 people listening to you. If you don't, it's a lot harder and a lot more strenuous to go find product market fit. But he can do it immediately with 150,000 followers.
And that's what I think is like, there's so much more attainable. Like, again, look, I think the founder journey is amazing on any way you join. But like, I do think people sometimes think like, well, I got to come up with the $1 billion idea. I got to come up with like, what's the next Google or Facebook? And then I got to hire an engineer and I got to do these things. Like, no. Like the goal can be so much easier. The goal, to your point, is like make $1.
And I don't think people realize how much an audience can do for them. People think, oh, what is a newsletter audience going to do for me? They start talking about CPMs, like ad placements can, $10 CPM is not going to move the needle. And I'm like, don't think of stuff owned audience, earned media as CPMs. I have 20,000 people who listen to me in South Carolina every time I send an email. And I might want to open a co-working space because in my small town, there is none. And there are tons of tech transplants from New York and Jersey. And I can go do that and tell 20,000 people who are potential buying customers that I have a new business. I can go open a restaurant. I can do anything and tell 20,000 people right there in my zip code that it exists. And that business has 50 to 75% more chance of success.
The more niche you are, actually, a lot of times, like the better, like the more your knowledge is like 100%. More like really narrow.
Yeah.
I love, like, I'm a big YouTube fan. I always tell people, like, I think it's like the best bang for the buck on everything.
It's awesome.
But one of the things I love is going down these like rabbit holes of like things that people are insane professionals at.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't believe someone does it. One of them, and the views that these guys have, but one is restoring golf clubs.
Yeah.
And
it's satisfying too to watch.
Completely satisfying. And then the other one that just blows my mind, which is and I'm forgetting his name, and I'm sure, please leave in the comments or tell us, but it's this guy who mows lawns. He goes to people's houses.
Oh, dude, I love that one. So, and they're like dilapidated, like foreclosures, basically.
So I'm doing, and I was talking to like our team, and I was like, guys, the economy is changing. Like, you could own a landscaping business, and you could then go out and or you could own this business who's creating content. The last video I looked at, he had 1.5 million views on. So I was doing back of the envelope math. I'm like, what he's making on that. Yeah. So I'm like, this guy does one day where he creates one video. The editing's very, very not high end.
Yeah.
It's just him. There's no one. This guy's probably making $100,000 per episode that he's doing, and he's doing an episode a week. And that's like, but now he's building this brand where he's got 1.3 million. So now he can start building his own mower. He can build his own And so the thing is like when you get that many eyeballs, and I think this is like, when we built Freshly, we built the product first, and then we built a marketing machine. And our marketing machine was all about paid ads. But we spent, in order to build that business, I'm guessing we handed over probably in the magnitudes of 200 total, maybe more to Mark Zuckerberg, 200 million to Mark Zuckerberg. We said, here you go. Now, in turn, he created, maybe it wasn't 200, it was probably 100, but we created over $2 billion of revenue in that business off that. So it was a very good ROI. But if you have people following you, if you have people watching you, and I'm always like, people are like, I don't have anything. I'm like, do you mow lawns? That's what this guy does.
And
he mows lawns.
And what he can do with that money, I mean, the lawn mowing guy, but also like people, there's a lot of people that go, just like randomly do something generous for people. And, the comments are always like, oh, you can't film people like that. But what they do with it is hey, here's $1,000. Your story resonated with me. Sometimes they're like undercover and it's like a whole sob story. But then a lot of times you'll see, hey, we talked to them after and we made a GoFundMe for this person. And with their audience of 1 million people that watch, I mean, I've seen people raise $1 million+ for these random strangers that the first video just, here's $1,000, thank you for doing something kind for me. This is on video, and obviously I'm sure they get people's permission. But then they go raise $1 million. They change people's lives just from their audience.
And that's what then people are like criticizing. You're like, even if the guy is making money off that, like net is the guy got $1 million. Yeah, he got $1 million on this. So like, I'm pretty sure like you.
Mr. Beast is so funny because I personally love Mr. Beast, but he gets flack for like, you could, with all this money, you could blah, 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 the world. And he has his own philanthropy arm where he goes and like literally saves people's lives with hundreds of millions of dollars in philanthropy. And he makes videos about it. And people are like, this is terrible. You shouldn't make video about like, recovering the sight of the blind. He's like, how do you think I pay for this? Like the video is paying for their eyesight. Like, but he can't win. And so there's this whole
people
game
that are going to hate out there. And I do think like that is part of this of like putting yourself out there, doing things, no matter what it is, whether you're doing a product, whether you're doing is like haters. There's a lot of haters out there. And it's easy on the beginning to hate, your Twitter guy when you have 19, it's easy to hate on that. Yeah. But like at the end of the day, every single one of these businesses started there. Like everything starts there. That's the journey. It's getting in the game and then staying in the game at doing something you love. Yeah. Where do you think like what do you really, so you've got the product coming out. What else are you really excited on?
Honestly, I'm excited about AI. And I know we've talked a little bit about it already, but I think people who understand the human behind the technology, like I just consulted with a company doing email last week, and I was like, hey, you got to remind yourself every single person that gives you their email is a person. So don't get fooled by like, oh, my list is growing. No. More people are giving you their information. You have to think of your audience as individual people in a room. you think of 1,000 people in a room, like that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then you think, well, 1,000 email subscribers is nothing. It's like, well, what about 1,000 people? So I start there, but what AI does, if you understand that, if you understand your audience are people, it accelerates everything. If you understand that first, if you know, in my opinion, traditional growth, traditional marketing, the systems that you can use to scale something from 1 to 10, from 10 to 100, AI can make all that happen much faster. And I think you can validate ideas much more quickly.
What do you think some of those examples, like using your kind of like, you know that they're humans. How are you using AI now to kind of like, to really accelerate that?
Yeah. So I have an audience that trusts me, and I speak very like openly on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And I'm like very irreverent. I just like I literally say what's top of mind. But with podcasting, clipping is very time intensive and usually requires a team that knows what they're doing, or there's a lot of AI tools out there, but they're not great. So I created my own agent with Claude that scrapes 100% of what I do in every long form video and finds the transcripts, and then gives me every single day, 5 timestamps of possible clipping opportunities. And all I have to do is click a button to approve that timestamp. It will go create it from YouTube. It'll literally download the YouTube video, create the timestamp of the video. And then with my voice, which I've given it something to the effect of 60 or 70,000 different posts that I've written on X and LinkedIn over the last 15 years, it knows how I write. And so it'll also draft a post for me. So all I have to do is review the timestamp, review the video, review the post, edit a couple things because I always want to, have my own human touch there, and then post it across 3 different platforms where 50,000 people are listening to me. And I can do that. I can do that every hour for the next 20 days tonight.
The thing that I always kind of phrase like to people is like how to think about AI is like, in the old days, you could have done that. What you would have done is you would have hired someone
exactly
to do that, and they would have worked 7-8 hours, and then but like now that someone is an agent, and I think it accelerates you, like today, to basically have this massive team underneath you. I still believe you got to have the man in the middle at least today to kind of make sure, because it's good, but it's not great. So there's got to be that approved process in there, but it accelerates. So that's an amazing example. You're using kind of the other areas that you're kind of thinking about, or areas you like thinking of how to explore.
Yeah, I mean, I think you already sort of touched on it, but I call it like the junior employee, and I hate it. It sounds so like the connotation surely is not good. I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this on YouTube, but like junior employees are replaceable.
Any engagement's good engagement.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you hate me, tell me in the comments.
Yeah.
Junior employees who don't have like highly effective skill sets yet, you're starting from an area in history where like you have to have something that's better than AI, or else someone's going to choose AI over you. And so I think when I think of how do I use AI, I think of all the different needs I have that I would like to hire someone for and either don't have the money or the wherewithal to do. I'm like, well, can AI do that? And in a kind of scary way, the answer is yes, like 90% of the time, which means 2 things. One, I don't have high leverage enough needs in some of these businesses yet, which I get. Once the leverage becomes high enough, like a human's still the right opportunity, I think, in most cases. But you can scale, and that's why I think this is such an exciting time, is I have all these different little micro companies that I'm leveraging AI for to almost be like I don't want to say chief of staff, because I think there are people who have had like AI chief of staffs, like really well done. I don't have that, but I do use AI for everything. I mean, even something as simple as Wispr Flow is a tool I use, and this is not a paid placement at all. Anyone listening, I love Wispr Flow.
I use Wispr Flow.
I love Wispr Flow so much that my wife, who uses Siri and started hating Siri with the most recent update, which if you're listening, Tim Cook, please make Siri better. It's so bad.
But also push this way up.
So high. Yeah. Like, please. But Wispr Flow, I was like, babe, you gotta. And I tell her about AI stuff all the time, and she's just like, that doesn't change my life at all. But Wispr Flow, I was like, I'm installing Wispr Flow on your phone, and you're going to see. And so she uses it now. And so I'm like, there's this middle ground.
Apple AI needs to buy Wispr Flow.
Yes,
if
please.
You're Tim Cook and you really buy Wispr Flow, put it so we don't have to go sideways. So it could just work. I
want it to work. It's, oh, dude, I could talk for a long time about Siri.
Here's the one thing, like for young people out there, if there's young people listening, this is the one, and we're hiring a ton of these people. So I'm telling you, the great thing about AI is like since ChatGPT 4.0, which is what, 2 years ago.
Forever ago now.
So no one has more than 2 years experience. And the world has changed so fast. And what
Yeah.
we're hiring in every single company I have is what we call these AI super users, which basically they just use AI for everything.
Yeah.
Because what you realize is if you're a young person and you have the skill of how to use AI and build AI and have these agents and agentic agents working, someone like you will say like, well, okay, now I'm doing all these things.
Yeah.
I find the value in it. So like for me is like I have many people, including on the Advantage, Greer, who's sitting right over there. I love all these things, but I'm also running companies and stuff.
Yeah.
She is a superpower in using AI.
Yeah.
And so I would say to young people out there, you have this unique competitive advantage where you are at the same level as really the same level as anyone. Be a power user in AI. It is like, don't be scared of it, lean into it, because that is going to be the ultimate like superpower.
And I think the companies who are doing it right are leveraging AI in their employees as well. And so when you think of like building your own side hustle, absolutely learn AI, but it's also going to make you a more marketable employee. And I can talk about this because Tyler Denk, the CEO of beehiiv, does openly, frequently. Every single employee at beehiiv is expected to use AI to increase their output in ways they would not be able to without it. To the point where now people who are hired at beehiiv have an AI onboarding like plan to learn how to use the tools that we had at beehiiv and they still have now. People have, there's AI office hours, there's like expectations of like, hey, we're 130, 140 people. Like we're going to scale this bad boy with AI. That's beehiiv's entire model.
It's a superpower. I think like I'm very positive. I think it's going to be a huge net positive for society. But what else is how else can our followers kind of follow you and follow what you're doing?
You can find me danielberk.com. That's BERK.com. I do consulting. I talk a lot on newsletter stuff and podcasting, but also I'm very active on Twitter, X at Daniel C. Berk. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can just Google Daniel and you can find me somewhere. There's a random guy that does videography whose name is Daniel Berk. Not me. That's not me, although I'm sure he appreciates this plug. But I mean, you can reach out, talk. I'm a real person. I'd love to have a conversation if anyone's interested in chatting.
And then a few final questions here that I always love to ask is like, outside of your podcast, what are a podcast, a show, something you think is like everyone should be, if they're not watching already, they should be all over?
Yeah, there's a guy named Chris Corner. It's spelled like Koerner, I believe. He's like I don't know if he calls himself this, but he's like a serial entrepreneur. Just has a bunch of cash flowing businesses that he starts and sells and buys and starts and sells. And he has a podcast called, I believe it's called The Corner Show. I just follow Chris Corner, so I don't know what his show's called. He's awesome. And everything he says on Twitter is very valuable. So the type of follow where you're like, if I don't know really what to do, like great example, Brass Tacks. He frequently tweets business ideas that he's like, someone should build this. Like, so if you literally don't know where to start, just go follow him and do something he suggests. So that's a great follow. I don't know. There's so many awesome people. There's a girl called, her name is Millie. I can't think of her last name. I'm blanking right now, but she has a company called Generalist World. Okay. And she is like touting her whole brand right now. And she's doing quite successfully this way, is like putting generalists on a pedestal. Like, hey, here's these people doing super random, almost like goofy things to make money. And here's a list of them, and here's jobs that they have available, and like here's companies that they've started. And so she has a podcast and a newsletter. She does really well. But I don't know. I really resonate with people who are just making money doing like funky stuff. I'm like, wow, I didn't think of that.
So I also love like we call like practical edges, which you gave a few. Claude, Wispr Flow. Yeah. What else? What else is like do you think is like an edge that like makes people just?
Yeah, I think everyone should open, whether it's Lovable or Claude Code or Codex or Replit, like build an app. Every single person who's like, I don't know where to start with AI, like don't Google how to start with AI. Choose the tool and ask it, how do I do this thing? So I've built like 5 different apps with Replit. I've built even more than that with Claude Code. And right now, like I pay for pro plans with Claude and Replit and ChatGPT and Wispr Flow. There's like several others I'm blanking right now, but I'm just constantly flirting with AI, trying to figure out like, what are you capable of?
Yeah, I mean, the pro,
otherwise do.
I constantly tell people is like the pro plan on whether it's Claude or ChatGPT is like stealing.
It's unbelievable.
It is if you have the
one prompt is worth $20.
you're like, and the $100 like just once you start using
it's insane.
And then if you don't know, it's like the only thing if you don't know how to use it, ask it how to use it. And it's
That's
like
right.
it's like agree like
and you can always like there's different levels, and I think people are like, well, I don't want to overspend on tokens. Like just dumb it down. Like when you aren't sure what to do, dumb it down, which in, Claude, you like change the actual model it's using. That's less expensive. Dumb it down and be like, hey, I don't know what to do. Help me think through this. And it'll do it more cheaply than like Opus will, where it's very expensive and high power. So it's like, there's ways to leverage AI that's like literally, like you said, like it's literally free almost.
And what I found is like, so I'm like most founders, I'm fairly opinionated.
Yeah.
I have a strong opinion. And I think when you have an idea, like you often kind of get sensitive to that idea.
Yeah.
So what I use Claude, and I just wrote about this in newsletter, is like, I use Claude a lot as like, you have to play the other side.
Yes.
Because what I'm willing is like it's super smart and I can give it all these things and I don't then get emotional because it's not like a person I know who I feel like is like, and so a lot of that just like it one, like pokes holes in bad ideas. Two, it like sometimes reinforces that I'm like, no, I feel really good about this.
Yeah.
But like I do it on everything. And I just like, my title of the thing is like, you have a McKinsey level consultant for free.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not ask it questions?
No,
you can ignore, but like, why would you not just be asking all these times? And like, I just think like for a founder hack is like push things in there.
Yes.
And then you can always ignore. And I'm not saying like you should let like AI direct your life. I think, but like, I'm just saying like it gives you, it's another thought partner. It's relative. It's basically free.
It's an advisor, if nothing else. I mean, I have an agent I built that is connected to every single bank account I have, which is, some people would say you're crazy for doing that. It is what it is. I pay. It's a SaaS, so I paid for the SaaS, but then I built the agent. Can't think of the name right now, and I probably shouldn't plug it just in case they go to jail someday or something. But it's an amazing tool that I've connected every investment, every bank account, every piece of cash, every credit card, everything. That now knows the way I spend, my patterns, my behaviors, my investments, my whole portfolio. And I can ask something as simple as like, hey, I want to take my wife out for a nice dinner. Like, where should I go and how much money do I have to spend? To, I'm trying to plan a family vacation and I have, this amount of money in this area, nicety in mind. Like, is that something I need to save for, or do we have the money right now? And I get an instant answer with real data from all of my bank accounts. And they might even say, you do have the money, but you need to take it out of this, illiquid asset. Give yourself 3 weeks. I mean, it's amazing. It's literally like I'm sitting next to a financial advisor. It's like having
one of the best financial advisors.
It's so cool. I mean, and it knows everything without thinking because it's AI. It's like, so there's so much leverage that I think people they're learning. I mean, I'm not the smartest AI user in the world, so we're learning this, but like there are so many people who have not even tried yet. And you just got to try. You got to try.
Well, this conversation was amazing. We're running up against time. Thank you so much for
absolutely
spending some time. I can't wait. I'm going to, on the side, get all these hacks on how to build newsletters really quickly. But thanks a ton.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.